Alright, today we are going to be talking about division tricks and how to justify them. More specifically, division tricks in base 8. So we're going to start out by dividing by 2. Before we do this, we're going to represent our numeral with its different place values. So D is going to be the representation of each place value, and then we'll put a sub number underneath to represent which place value it is. So we write out D3, D2, D1, and D0, and then have the base 8 underneath it. So before we can divide by 2, we're going to need to show that this number is in base 8. Because D0 is always our ones place, it's not going to be multiplied by anything. D1 in base 10 would be times 10, but since this is base 8, we're doing D1 times 8. D2 is our 64 place, and D3 is our 512 place, because 64 is 8 squared and 512 is 8 cubed. And you would actually say 512 and 64 because it isn't actually 512. So now we're going to take a 2 out of all of these parts because we're dividing by 2. So what you have left over is D3 times 2, 5, 6 plus D2 times 3, 2 plus D1 times 4. And left over we have D0, which is the last digit, or you could also say the first digit, depending on how you're reading the number. So the trick here is that this last digit has to be divisible by 2, because we know that all of the other digits are divisible by 2. We just proved that. To divide by 3, you're going to write out the number the exact same way, because we are still in base 8. But because not all of these place values are divisible by 3 right off the bat, we're going to have to separate them. So 512 turns into 510 plus 2, because 510 is divisible by 3, but 512 is not. 64 turns into 6, 3 plus 1, and 8 turns into 6 plus 2. Then we're just going to separate all of the parts so that we have an area in parentheses that has numbers divisible by 3 and an area in parentheses that does not have the numbers that are divisible by 3. So then you will end up with D3 times 510 plus D2 times 63 plus D1 times 6. And then in the leftover area, the stuff that is not divisible by 3, we have D3 times 2 plus D2 plus D1 times 2 plus D0. So then you will look down here and take a 3 out of this area, and what you actually end up having in the parentheses here doesn't really matter, because we know that it is divisible by 3, which is what matters the most. But what's left over is what does matter. So you have D3 times 2 plus D2 plus D1 times 2 plus D0. So this is kind of an equation to figure out if a number is divisible by 3. So I wrote this out here, and then you will see what the trick is. So you want to multiply that first, or what you would say last digit, by 2, and then the third digit, so 2 away from that last digit or first digit, by 2. Then add both of those products together, and also add the second and third digits, and look and see if that sum is divisible by 3. And that's how you would know if the number is divisible by 3. To divide by 4, you get very lucky again in the same way that you did with 2, where you don't have to do any of that separating that you had to do for dividing by 3. So you write out the number the same way that you did for all the other tricks, but this time you're going to take out a 4. And so very similarly to our dividing by 2 problem, all you have left over is the final digit. So the trick is also looking at just that final digit and seeing if it is divisible by 4. Dividing by 5 is, again, one of the trickier ones. So you write out the number the same way, separate all of the numbers to see, put them into parts that are divisible by 5 and parts that are not. So you do that separating and find out that what you have left over here is D3 times 2 plus D2 times 4 plus D1 times 3 plus D0. So the trick is that equation. So you're just going to look at that equation and find out if once you've multiplied and added, if that is divisible by 5. To conclude thinking about why these tricks work, basically you're splitting the number up by place value, so the d sub n represents whatever numeral is in the digit multiplied by its place value, and then the values are different for every base. So in base A we had our 8 place and our 64 place and our 512 place. And then basically you're taking the number that you're dividing by out of each digit, so you know that those parts are going to be divisible by that number, and then you're going to find out that whatever's left over has to be divisible by that number too, and if it's not, then the entire number can't be divisible by it. So that's where the tricks come in. Thank you for watching.